floor to Jacob.
Thanks, Michelle. Me share my screen. When you say my bio all out like that, it does sound like a lot. All right. Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Thanks for having me today. As Michelle said, my name is Jacob Boyd. I'm with the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries. And today I'm going to give you all kind of a quick update on a lot of the resilient synergies that the Department of Environmental Quality and all of its divisions are doing and have been doing the last few years. So I'm sure everyone's aware of the Governor Cooper's Executive Order 80 that came out in 2018 that directed the development and implementation of the climate risk assessment and resilience plan and natural working lands action plans that were published in 2020. So for EO80, that is North Carolina's commitment to address climate change by incorporating mitigation and adaptation practices in their programs, policies, and operations. All of that to protect human life and health, property, natural and built infrastructure, cultural resources, and other valuable assets. And so as we have been able to work more on climate change and resilience over the last few years, we have also developed the North Carolina Clean Energy Plan, and the Department of Emergency Management is in the process of finalizing the Hazard Mitigation Plan, which is the first iteration that's been able to incorporate climate change impacts. So with all of these really great plans out there, what we're really trying to do is find those synergies and those connections between all the different plans, because there's a lot of overlap, there's a lot of connections, and we just want to make sure that we're continuing to make those connections in all of the existing programs and activities that we have going on and any future ones. So these, like the risk assessment plan and resilience plan, really was a great roadmap of how to move forward and implement a lot of great recommendations. So we want to make sure that those are getting progress made on them and that we're moving forward with all of the plans. So one way specifically that we are doing this is through the North Carolina Coastal Habitat Protection Plan. So the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan, or as we always lovingly refer to it as the CHIP, prioritizes actions for coastal habitats that will increase resilience, carbon sequestration, and environmental justice. And again, this was the first, we did a 2021 CHIP amendment, which we do every 5-year updates. And this was the first time we were able to include climate change impacts and resilience into the CHIP amendment as well. So we wanted to make sure as we were developing this in conjunction with the Risk Assessment Resilience Plan, Natural Working Lands Action Plan, that those connections were made and continue to be made during implementation. Just a little bit about what the CHIP is. So the CHIP is North Carolina's authority to help restore and protect and conserve the coastal habitats throughout our estuaries and sounds. So it summarizes the latest science, the aid and management of fish habitat and water quality. The CHIP has been around since 2004. It was part of the Fisheries Reform Act of 1997. And again, it gets updated on 5-year increments, with the recent one just getting done in 2021. So we focus on habitats. There are 6 different CHIP habitats throughout North Carolina's coastal waters. All the threats of those habitats, with water quality being one of the top threats to the various habitats. And then looking at the priority issues and recommendations. So the CHIP is a DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality document that the Division of Marine Fisheries and APNIP are co-leads on helping to lead it. But it is all of the different divisions that have a part in the coastal areas of North Carolina play a role. It's reviewed by the CHIP Steering Committee, and it's adopted by all 3 of the regulatory commissions: the Marine Fisheries Commission, the Coastal Resources Commission, and our Environmental Management Commission. So some of the main overarching goals of the CHIP, really to improve the effectiveness of existing rules and programs to protect coastal habitats, look at strategic habitat areas, enhance and protect habitats from adverse physical impacts, and enhance and protect water quality that impacts all of the different habitats. So with this latest CHIP amendment in 2021, we picked 5 priority habitat issues to focus in on. And this is where water quality is really factored into all of these different priority habitat issues. So we're looking at SAV, protection, restoration, focusing on water quality. Because SAV, submerged aquatic vegetation, which is basically the seagrass that grows underwater, is really what we refer to as the canary in the coal mine that can really be an indicator of overall ecosystem health and water quality in the area. So we're also looking at wetland protection and enhancement through nature-based solutions, monitoring for status and regulatory effectiveness, environmental rule compliance to existing rules that are on the books, and then looking at wastewater infrastructure. Oops. So as I said, water quality has really started standing out as one of the major common denominators that really impacts all of the coastal habitats that we are managing and trying to protect, to preserve. So it's really, and with the increase in coastal development, increase in stormwater runoff, as you can see here, this is a really neat diagram. Increase in storm frequency from climate change impacts, all of that really impacts the estuaries and the coastal habitats significantly, and across the board for everything that we manage, including our fisheries. So this is a really great figure that I borrowed from the Nature Conservancy. This is looking at coastal resilience, and where, if you think about coastal resilience, it's the intersection of community and ecosystem resilience. So, there's a lot of programs out there focusing on community resilience, getting out there in some of these local communities and trying to create more resilience to climate change impacts. But then there's also ecosystem resilience, where we're out there in the estuaries, building oyster reefs and trying to replant SAV and other things, where we're trying to make the ecosystem more resilient to those impacts. But those two, again, aren't in silos. There's connection there, because a lot of the things you do to help increase ecosystem resilience will also increase community resilience. So making those connections and keeping those connections as you move forward, trying to justify various projects and seeing where you have the main benefits, but also the co-benefits. So part of that is identifying nature-based or green infrastructure solutions, again, where coastal communities can increase their resilience by effectively protecting, restoring, and sustainably managing their natural resources while strengthening local capacity for climate adaptation. And this is where we think the CHIP really fits in here, where it's identifying solutions that can help with ecosystem resilience and also have the co-benefit of increasing that community resilience. So here's just another diagram of looking at the CHIP and EO80 synergies, looking at where those connections are between ecosystem and community resilience, but then also factor in natural working lands and carbon sequestration. So, we have an example I like to use is if you're in a local community, and one of the recommendations to help with community resilience is a floodplain buyout. How can that also be looked at for co-benefits of how can that also strengthen, or what type of nature-based solutions can be incorporated there to also strengthen some of the stormwater controls for the local estuary. And then also, how much carbon sequestration is happening there to get credit for carbon mitigation. So really all of those are connected, and trying to get the most bang for our buck when we're out there trying to justify a lot of these really important strategies that we're trying to do. And here in the box, this is, again, some of those CHIP priorities that we talked about and how those really fit into this cycle of connection between ecosystem and community resilience. So we're what we call our implementation phase, that we got the 2021 CHIP amendment approved and finalized. Sorry, I had to pop up. And so one of the ways that we're implementing over the next couple of years is we really want to try to incorporate a lot of these recommendations that came out of the CHIP amendment into existing efforts to really, not reinvent the wheel and try to get credit where credit's due, and try to, without creating new programs and new efforts, try to incorporate it into existing efforts. That's not to say that there won't be a need for new programs and new efforts in the future, but where can we incorporate it now? And we've been working with various agencies. We incorporating the CHIP recommendations into the RCCP program, into INCOR's RISE program, also through the Natural Working Lands Stakeholder Group. The Coastal Habitat Subcommittee has been working on the last year or so into creating submerged aquatic vegetation greenhouse gas stock into the North Carolina greenhouse gas inventory. And we should be able to incorporate some of that data and information in the next upcoming, in 2024, the North Carolina's greenhouse gas overall inventory. And then also the creation of the North Carolina Resilience Clearinghouse, which I'll talk more in depth here in a second. Another way, there's a lot of great recommendations that came out of the Resilience Plan and Natural Working Lands Plan. So creating an easy to search, filter database of all those recommendations to ensure that we are being able to track our progress and incorporating a lot of those really great recommendations that people spend a lot of time developing, and a lot of subject matter expertise and sitting around a table. And then working on the even regional scale, working with the Southeast Regional Partnership for Planning and Sustainability, their South Atlantic Salt Marsh Initiative Conservation Plan, which is in development now. So this is just an example. We're working on this, what we're calling the recommendations database. Again, this is just picked out of the table, but just to kind of show that being able to look at the actions and recommendations that came out of the Resilience and Natural Working Lands Plan, and be able to filter and sort easily to see, if you are someone that wants to do a project or wants to start something, and you want to know if it's a recommendation in the plan, you can find it there, or if you're tracking on something, you can find it here. So we want to make sure that we are finding those overlapping efforts, making things efficient, and checking off our boxes to make sure we're implementing these important recommendations. So the Resilience Clearinghouse is a partnership with the Department of Environmental Quality and NCOR, the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resilience. So we're collaborating to develop a Resilience Clearinghouse based off of two recommendations. One that came out of the Risk and Resilience Plan to develop an online climate resilience clearinghouse and toolbox, and the other that came out of the Natural Working Lands Action Plan to build a natural working land solution toolbox. So there's a lot of different partners that are working on with this. Again, this is coming from the department and with NCOR. And so what we're trying to do is merge those two recommendations. And again, because there is overlap between when we talk about climate resilience and when we talk about natural working lands, carbon sequestration, and climate adaptation and mitigation. So this is going to be an all-encompassing of marrying the two and having one resource to point people in North Carolina for all things climate resilience and natural working lands resources and information. So we started almost a year ago with putting together a steering committee with stakeholders from around the state and a lot of subject matter experts around the table. And we really made a lot of great progress. Our target audience is really broad. We want this to be able to help local decision makers, regional councils of government, state agencies, other organizations, universities, and the public. And I think we can accomplish all of this. So we got funding from the U.S. Climate Alliance over this past year, and we consulted out to a group that is building the framework of what this would look like. And those decisions will be happening in the next few weeks. And then we'll be working on the actual build out of the site and incorporating all the information. So a lot of exciting stuff happening with the clearinghouse. And to just give you a kind of a rough feel for what we're talking about, this is just an example of as the steering committee was developing what we wanted this to look like. This is kind of an example of what we're talking about when we say what a clearinghouse is. So again, it's a hub of information. It's not necessarily creating new data or creating new data sets or creating new things, whereas it's really pointing you in the right direction of where you need to go to get some of the resources, depending on what activity you want to do, where you are in the state. So it's really kind of a one-stop shop to find information, or at least find out where to go to get information. And one of the important things from the beginning is, for us, was to incorporate environmental justice, not just as a tab, but actually throughout the entire clearinghouse and through everything we do, and put that environmental justice lens on everything. So here's an example of what this portals, what we're calling tier 1 high level, would look like when you come to the site. So we'd have these kind of overarching levels of information. And then with secondary subportals of all more specific information. For example, planning guides, if you want on a local level, state level, regional level, and tools and mapping depending on what you're trying to do. So really, it's limitless on what we can include in here. And we've made a lot of good progress, and we're excited about the efforts. Another good thing for North Carolina is there's been quite a few guinea pigs around the country that have already gone through this process. And so one of the things we also did was reach out to some of these other states to see what worked well for them, what they would change. And now that they've had their sites up for a decent amount of time, if they could go back, what kind of changes would they make to it? And we got some really good information from them. But this is from the California Adaptation Clearinghouse, and it's just an example of what we were referring to with those high level, where this is kind of the main page you go to, and you can sort by topic, look at case studies, and so on and so forth. Here's another example of kind of those high level first tier from AdaptVA, where you're really kind of, there's like all more general tabs to get into more of the specifics with the secondary and sub-level portals. This is an example, another one from California Adaptation Clearinghouse, of what those tier 2 subportals would be. And as you can see, there's a lot more information here by topic, by area, and it can really help you kind of zone in depending on what you're trying to look at and what your background is or what your focus is. Here's another example of what those tier 2, as you're really starting to get into what you're trying to locate. And here's some other examples from CalAdapt with a data portal, and then from the Georgetown Climate Center. And we are incorporating some GIS and some maps into the site, where you can actually look by region, by county, by area, to try to find out some of the specific information you're looking for within that specific area. And then there's a lot of other examples of, going through and having like checkbox or drop down filtering to really get into the specific weeds of what you're looking for. And then just an open search where you can go and just search for a key term, phrase, or an item that you're looking for. So, the overall goal is to make this usable, user-friendly, and easy to get from point A to point C without, and being very point and click and intuitive. So that way multiple audiences and users will find it useful. So, the benefits of not only this, but a lot of the other things that we're trying to do in these kind of climate resilience synergies is making things efficient for the short term and long term across agencies, across divisions, across stakeholder groups, and also, again, for justification of future resources. If we can make these connections, and I know a lot of the RFPs now and funding opportunities, they ask you, how does your project tie into any local or regional resilience planning? And if we have a resource that's able to identify multiple plans and resources that the project would help check the box off, that's just further justification of obtaining those resources. And again, getting credit where credit's due and highlighting those benefits, but also all the co-benefits that may come from the project. So we're going to continue to integrate ecosystem community resilience and welcome any feedback. Again, it's exciting times in North Carolina to be able to work on a lot of these issues, but we were obviously behind the 8 ball a little bit coming into it later. So we've really made a lot of progress, but we're continuing to try to keep the momentum going as much as possible and get as much stuff done as we can. And with that, I will take any questions. And of course, my email is here if anybody has any questions following the meeting.
We don't have any questions right now, Jacob. So we definitely could go ahead on and switch it to Madison.
Okay, great.
Let me know when I'm good to go to share, Jacob. I think you're muted.
Sorry, it's taking a little bit longer because your name's so much farther down in the list now that there's
Oh.
more people here to try to drag it to.
I gotcha. I'm glad you decided to go first because I can allude to a lot of things that you talked about, including AdaptVA, which is in my presentation. So that'd be great.
Nice.
While Jacob's pulling that up, just to recap, because that was an excellent presentation, my name's Madison Teeter. I'm based in Norfolk, Virginia, but I'm actually from North Carolina. I went to NC State, Go Pack, very familiar with the state and y'all's work. I used to work at the North Carolina Museum of Natural Resources. If y'all can hear the dog that's down there, I apologize. It's a very bustling city here in Norfolk, including dogs. But I work for Wetlands Watch, like I said, here in Norfolk, and we are an environmental nonprofit that works statewide to help communities prepare for flooding, whether it be through sea level rise, land subsidence, or increased rainfall. So I'm guessing Jacob's handed it over to me, so I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen.
Well, I didn't know we were supposed to do college allegiances, so I'll say Go Hills before I hand it over officially.
Oh, no. Oh, Jacob.
Well, at least neither one of us were Duke, so we're okay.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, but go state forever. So we can talk after. Great. So Wetlands Watch works in a variety of different capacities across the state. We run the CRS users group for the state, which is the community rating system within the National Flood Insurance Program. So we maintain this awesome network of floodplain managers. We do a lot of work surrounding pilot projects when it comes to managed retreat and prioritizing living shorelines and other nature-based solutions. We help local city planners prepare for what the next 30 years is going to look like. So a lot of what Jacob was talking about is work that we integrate into what we do in Virginia. And we have worked on a variety of different projects. And the project that I'm going to talk about with you all is this partnership that we have with APNEP, or the Albemarle Pamlico National Estuary Partnership. So the two organizations, APNEP and Wetlands Watch, were originally partners on the Virginia Institute of Marine Science Center project, or VIMS, out of the Coastal Resources Management Program. We originally were partners in a NOAA grant, and the NOAA grant was surrounded on looking at increasing use of natural nature-based features in Virginia to build resilience against storm-driven flooding. So at the end of that grant period, which is a little bit over a year ago, we, APNEP and Wetlands Watch, kind of had a conversation and identified needs that APNEP had to kind of conduct an assessment in North Carolina to figure out if the tools and the resources that were created out of this VIMS project for Virginia would be worthwhile to recreate for North Carolina and for North Carolina stakeholders and local governments to use to try and prioritize natural nature-based features within the state. In addition to that NOAA VIMS project, Wetlands Watch had worked on a separate grant under the Coastal Zone Management Program to create this really comprehensive database that is really that I'm glad that Jacob went first, that really identifies plans that point out resiliency. But in addition to pointing out plans, it identifies funding resources, and then it identifies potential projects that still need funding from a variety of different local governments that have been pointed out in hazard mitigation plans, local resilience plans, and anything like that. And what it does is this database, it actually connects all three of those things in Virginia. So if you have a project that needs certain funding sources, it can connect you to a certain funding source that would be able to, that project meets that criteria. And then that project, if it identifies certain things that it wants to focus on, it connects it to a plan that says, hey, we want you to prioritize these things. Here's how this region of the state is going to focus on it, or here's how this local government should focus on it. So kind of what Jacob was just saying has been created for Virginia through Wetlands Watch, and it's been live for about 2 years now. And we were discussing maybe what that would look like for North Carolina if it was to be created. So that conversation kicked off at the beginning of last summer of 2021. And from there on, we kind of conducted this needs assessment through various North Carolina stakeholders, different state representatives, different nonprofits that are located throughout the state, different local governments, basically anyone who was willing to discuss this with us. So I apologize that if the presentation I'm about to make is one that you all have already seen from us having discussions with you, and hello again. So to go a little bit more in depth of what these two tools look like, both the database and the map viewer that came out of the NOAA project that focuses on natural and nature-based features. This is a screenshot of what that database looks like that was made for Virginia. As you can see, the platform that we've used is called Airtable. You can kind of think of it as just a more dynamic version of Excel spreadsheets. It just allows you to do a little bit more color coding, a little bit more organization. And then once again, it lets you connect between two tabs a little bit more fluidly to connect different parts of information. So if you look at the top here, we have funding sources, and then we have plans and studies. Unfortunately, for a variety of different reasons, this is like the public facing part of this database. We could not make the Virginia projects from local governments public because a lot of local governments were very sensitive about having potential projects put out to the public. So maybe that's just a lessons learned for you all if you decide to do something similar to this, is that a lot of local governments are very sensitive about having their projects put out there. And so it may not be something that you can focus on as much as you'd like to. But once again, it's a really great resource still because you can connect plans and studies that say, hey, we should really prioritize putting a lot of these projects on the ground, and it connects it to potential funding sources. I have a link to the database. You all will get a copy of this presentation, and I can even pull it up on my own web browser if we want to go through it a little bit more, if there's questions after my presentation. But the basics is like the name, where the funding source is coming from. You can click on the RFP, the full RFP. We have it integrated into different categories of what types of projects, the funding maximum, if there's a non-federal cost share that's required, and when the full proposal deadline is. So we update this about once a month. We go in and put in new funding sources. Most of the time, these are just reoccurring grants, and we just have to go in and update like the cost share requirements or when the proposal date is due, and then the new RFP. So what that looks like for the work that we're doing with AppNep is that we've created a draft of this database for North Carolina and have kind of been shopping it around with those different stakeholders that we've been having conversations with. And we've included a bit more tabs for what we talked about with AppNep on this project. So you'll see that we have tools, funding opportunities, plans and studies, reports, and stakeholders. It's not as extensive or as long as the Virginia one, because this is just meant to be a draft of what you all could continue to work on, and we'll be handing it over to AppNep and teaching them how to continue to update this database in Airtable if you all decide that this is valuable to you all, and if you want to continue to use it. But once again, very similar for funding opportunities, plans and studies. And then we created separate like mapping tools, separate reports, and then stakeholders in case there's a new organization that is trying to find potential partners for a grant opportunity where you're kind of wanting to collaborate a bit more on a project. So we've created this draft. It's not public yet. We are anticipating at the end of this grant period, which will be in a couple of months, it will be made public and you all can look through the draft that we've made. So AdaptVA, so Jacob touched on this a little bit. AdaptVA is a website in Virginia that resilience partners in our area use to look up a bunch of different things and have at their disposal when they're talking about resilience projects. So the tool that I'm going to be talking about is, funny enough, in the tool section of this webpage, and it is the NNBF map layer within the Virginia map. So what this is it's a natural and nature-based feature map viewer of the state. It takes stock of all of the existing NNBFs that are within 10 feet of sea level along the coastline of Virginia. And then it also lays out potential NNBFs that could be installed along the coastline that would strengthen the existing ones or create additional protection for infrastructure that is landward of those potential NNBFs. So the three primary steps of this project was just to map the existing NNBFs, once again at 10 feet elevation in the coastal zone, identify and rank those NNBFs based on their benefits to those communities, once again, like eliminating stormwater negative effects, and if it protects the critical infrastructure in the area. And then once again, identifying target areas for new NNBFs to improve the flood resilience in those areas. So, four main ranking components of what the layer shows on the map. And unfortunately, I'm not going to show the map today because it is a lot of layers. It is not just this layer, it is a multitude. I have the link in the presentation if you all want to look at it. Just please forgive it if you look at it later on today. It takes a little while to load because it is a massive map viewer and it has a lot of different purposes, not just for this. The first component that you'll see if you click on the layers and it shows the different rankings of the different NNBFs is the flooding mitigation services. So once again, how well it protects and mitigates flooding and stormwater in those areas. How many buildings does the NNBF benefit? Are there any critical facilities that it benefits? And can that NNBF be taken advantage of in existing programmatic incentives? So particularly in this case, it's the community rating system. Can this living shoreline or can this NNBF be used maybe as an open space credit or protection of a living shoreline credit within the community rating system to provide those discounts in the National Flood Insurance Program for the members of that community? So each NNBF is assigned a normalized score of low, medium, or high based on these four components. So this is just breaking down those four components a little bit more. Once again, the first one's flooding mitigation services. It really factors in the capacity of that project to dampen wave energy and allow for floodwater infiltration. And it also focuses on the opportunity or frequency that NNBF actually encounters those floodwaters. So not only its ability to mitigate floodwater, but also how frequently is it actually going to be mitigating against that. The second one, benefits to buildings and critical infrastructure. So this was what I think is the most interesting part of what happened in this analysis, was that we actually linked the NNBFs to buildings that benefit by creating inundation pathways, or IPs, which depict the lowest elevation areas that are connecting the shoreline to buildings. So we actually mapped out where the floodwaters are going to go during high tide events or during heavy storm water events, and it's actually showing where those floodwaters are going to go and which buildings are going to be impacted when those NNBFs are there and when they are not. So using those IPs, we can really identify how many buildings and critical infrastructure, those shorelines, or those NNBFs are going to protect. Once again, that fourth one focuses on programmatic incentives, so the community rating system that I discussed a little bit earlier, and also water quality and TMDL credit potential at reducing those sediments and a variety of different things that it can just benefit from in the other different programs that exist in Virginia. So if this map viewer was to be recreated in North Carolina, it would have to be modified based on the program details and the other incentives that lie in this state, because once again, this was made for Virginia, and our conversation was with stakeholders to see if this tool would be beneficial if it were to be recreated in North Carolina. Along with that, in that tool, there's NNBF fact sheets that really discuss the potential for different communities throughout Virginia and how it would benefit if they were to install more NNBFs, and really analyzing what the current NNBFs do for that community. So this is for James City County in Virginia. It's located just north of Norfolk, and it talks about all of the different acres of NNBFs, whether it's tidal marsh or wooded or forest wetland. And then it talks about the benefits of those NNBFs to the community. So if ABNEP saw this as something valuable, with that map viewer, they could also make these fact sheets that highlight what those NNBFs are doing for the various different communities in North Carolina. In addition to that, we made fact sheets that highlight what each of those NNBFs do. So for forest and woodlands, this is the example of that. It talks about the multiple benefits of what that NNBF does, and then also the potential water quality benefits, as well as the community rating system credit potential. So those are the things that are linked as well with that map viewer project. Oh, what's going on here? Oh, there we go. So all in all, we've had a variety of different discussions of what this could look like in North Carolina. This is my email here at the top. My colleague Ross Weaver, who has also been having these conversations with me, with North Carolina stakeholders. We've gotten a variety of different responses on how useful either one of these tools would be. If you all have questions about them, I will take them. If you have feedback on them, we take them. The general sentiment is that the database and the map viewer would be really beneficial, but only if it could be updated on a very timely basis, especially for the map viewer. With the dunes and the Outer Banks area of North Carolina, it would need to be updated about every 6 months, we've heard, if it was really to be beneficial. And then also that database would basically need to be updated on that same time frame. And that's similar to what we've heard in Virginia too. So it's really beneficial. It's just a lot of maintenance. But that's what we've heard from North Carolina folks, and we're hoping to roll all of this out for AppNet to be able to use, and for them to provide it to you all in any capacity that they see fit. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I think I've seen some discussion in the chat, so let me take a look at that. Wetlands Watch is an environmental nonprofit. Larry, I see that question. Does the flood analysis take storm surge into account? Yes, it does. This presentation will be made shareable. I shared it with Michelle right before we got on today, so it will be made available. Who maintains this for Virginia? I'm very curious about the ongoing maintenance question too. Yes, absolutely. So once again, it was a NOAA project. It was a variety of different organizations. It was us, other nonprofits located in Virginia, as well as a couple of different academic centers, the main one being VIMS. So that's kind of the problem, is that we had a lot of hands-on in this project and we all kind of have ownership over it. But since that NOAA grant ended, it's currently, that specific layer at least has not been updated since the project ended. So it's a very grant forward project in the sense that it hasn't been updated since, because we have not been able to secure funding to do so. But for the database, the funding database, Wetlands Watch maintains it because it is our specific project that we created. I'm so sorry if y'all can hear that dog. I don't know what is happening.
I can't hear it, Madison.
Okay.
But there's another question. It says, can you talk about NNBFs in the context of primary nursery areas?
Ooh. I unfortunately cannot expand upon that part of it. Once again, there was a lot of hands in this project. It wasn't just us. It was about 10 different partners. But if you would like to email me, and I'll put my email in the chat too, in case you all weren't able to grab it fast enough there at the end. And Michelle has my email as well, but I can definitely get you connected with someone who's able to answer that question. Stacy.
Yeah, sorry guys. I don't know if you can hear me. I have trucks in the background as well, and I think there's some interference on the line, but that's actually a connection we'd like to make with the needs of North Carolina and connecting it to a tool that would be useful for North Carolina. And I actually was just texting Jacob during this discussion. That's where we want to link back with Jacob and my colleague Jimmy Johnson and Ian Deaton and others that work on implementing the chip to see where we can find those types of synergies, and incorporating in North Carolina the databases for the primary nursery areas would be one of the types of things that we could work on to make things more North Carolina specific. And that's, I wanted to kind of mention too, these projects evolved independently. The project we're working on with Wetlands Watch and VIMS came along actually before all of the EO80 discussions and all of the plans that Jacob gave an overview on in the beginning of his presentation. So these things were evolving simultaneously, and we're having those discussions too to make sure we're not duplicating effort, but again, trying to identify where those synergies exist.
Yeah, and I see a lot of questions. This is great. So Forrest asked, have we talked to Virginia or North Carolina, like legislative leaders, mayors, elected officials, or county commissioners? Have they found it useful? So we've talked to a couple of different local government folks about this, and the feedback generally of what we've heard is that there's so many tools, right? They're getting tools thrown at them all the time, whether it's a database, whether it's a map layer, whether it's a fact sheet, and there's just so much. And it's kind of like what they want is just something that they know that is reliable, that they can look at all of the time and doesn't need like a lot of analyzation to understand what it means to them, which is totally fair. And I think maybe that's our biggest lesson learned is that whatever is given to local governments, they are so strapped for capacity. I mean, in Virginia, our favorite but unfortunate story to tell is that our floodplain manager in one of our organizations is also the same guy who checks the bear traps every morning in his community. Like local governments are really, really strapped in capacity right now, so they really need to be given something that they know that they can use all the time, that's reliable and really useful. So that's kind of the general sentiment that we've heard from folks is that they just need something that's really simple, not complicated, and like connects them to money more than anything else. So that's really what we hope that the database can do for folks, because it connects once again the plans and studies, the funding, stakeholders. So it's all like in one place, and that's how we've been using it in Virginia, and hopefully it can provide that type of resource in North Carolina as well. Have we previously coordinated with DEQ and NCORE? So we've had a couple of different, like Stacy was just saying, we've had a couple of different conversations with folks at DEQ and NCORE. We originally started this project last September, and we had a lot of initial conversations with them as well. Those conversations unfortunately got a little bit stalled due to a funding lapse that happened with North Carolina DEQ. So we haven't been able to talk to folks again until very recently. So once again, what Stacy said is these projects have been working separately from each other, unfortunately, but now we are combining those efforts now that we are closing out this project. But we have been having those conversations. And I see a couple questions for Jacob. I don't know if you've seen them in the chat.
Well, I'll add about the stakeholders. So part of what the U.S. Climate Alliance funding that we got to build the framework was doing stakeholder interviews. So the consultant group did stakeholder interviews with local government officials and other various levels of stakeholders throughout the state to ask that very question, like what's going to be useful for you all, what do we want to include, and that's the same feedback we got. And I can definitely see our projects collaborating and moving forward, because with the clearinghouse, it is going to be statewide. So we're looking at, not only coastal resilience issues, but in the western part of the state because NCORE is one of the drivers. And we're, our step in the process, we're really just getting to the point of building the framework and not actually building the site out. So I think it actually coincides well with you all, Madison, probably wrapping up so we can have those conversations soon and figure out ways to incorporate some of those synergies. And then let's see, does DMF promote the NRCS Equip 643 practice to growers? Adam, you may have to give me a little bit more information on that. I might not know exactly what that is to be able to answer you at the moment, but I can find that out for you.
Yeah, it's I don't know that there's many projects in North Carolina. I work with Dare Soil and Water Conservation District, and it's something that my board of supervisors is trying to get going for oyster restoration in our area. I know there's been EQIP projects in Virginia done before. Basically, it's a cost share program that incentivizes oyster growers to plant substrate, you know, clutch or whatnot on areas they can harvest or not. But I was just, you know, just curious. In the
Yeah,
future,
okay.
I guess it would be a better question.
Yeah, we actually know that jogs my memory. I didn't know exactly what the equip was, but yeah, we actually worked with the North Carolina Coastal Federation, who we collaborate with often, who's an NGO. They had brought that to us, and with somebody, a potential grower that wanted to utilize it. So we kind of developed a framework, and we did have one grower apply for that. And I can't off the top of my head remember if it has been processed and he's actually gotten it yet, but it was in that was all occurring this year. So yes, I would say we promote it and are open to other folks applying for that.
Great, thanks.
And another thing, in case other people have questions, I just wanted to put in, we also have a survey that highlights all of the different things that I included throughout this presentation that we want North Carolina folks to fill out to give us feedback on what you all think these tools should look like, if it's even worth North Carolina's time to dedicate funding and resources to creating these projects and replicating them in North Carolina. So I put the link to that survey in the chat if you all want to fill it out. I don't think I missed. Can anyone talk about?
Yeah, I was trying to go back through to Madison to make sure we got all of them answered, and I think we pretty much did. So,
Okay, great. Well, once again, my email's in the chat, and also the form. Jacob, I know I have your email, so we can get connected about the things that we were discussing. But thank you all so much for having us, and thank you for welcoming a Virginia project to be able to present in this space. This was great.
Yeah, same here. I appreciate it.
yeah, thank you guys so much again for taking time out of your schedule. Stacy, I didn't know if there was anything that you wanted to add. Nope. So I kind of put you on the spot.
No,
So-
that's totally fine. I wanted to express my appreciation for Madison and Jacob coming to talk today too. It's really great to see how these projects have evolved, and we're really looking forward to talking more about, again, identifying where those synergies exist, and really appreciate them taking time to be here today.
Well, perfect. And again, thank you guys for your participation. It always does my heart good to see so many people tuning into these webinars monthly. So I think we're on a pretty good track here to continue these. But anyways, hey, so this one actually ended a little bit early. So I've put the link in the chat for anyone that needs PDH hours or credit for this webinar. So once you complete that, I'll get that back to you as soon as possible, Monday or Tuesday at the latest. Some may trickle in before the end, but that will be the latest that you'll receive your credit. And if there's nothing else, then again, thank you, Madison, Stacy, and Jacob for your time. And you guys have a wonderful rest of the day. And I'll
Yes,
say,
you too.
hang on in case anybody else have any other questions or need the link again, and so on and so forth. All right.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
Thank y'all so much.
All right. You're welcome. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Michelle.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Hey, Michelle,
Yes, ma'am.
how soon is the recording available?
You'll get a
Because-
copy of it probably in about 30 minutes.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
Literally, we were having a staff meeting where I wish all of my colleagues could have seen this present. It's just very timely to a plan that we're trying to update right now.
Oh,
So-
yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. So it'll be ready in about 30 minutes. If you want me to, I can forward you the presentations that Jacob and Madison sent to me, because we usually put all this stuff on our website. It takes about a week for it to get up there.
I
Yeah.
figured it might take a while. Yeah, that's why I didn't want to put you in a rush, but I was like, oh wow, I didn't know how quickly
No,
it might potentially be available.
No, you're fine. Because you were the main person. So you're going to get a copy of the recording, and I'll go ahead on now and shoot you a copy. I'm going to save it and shoot you a copy of their presentations as well. So that way you'll have it for whatever, reference you need it for. So,
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
You're very
Thanks for inviting us to participate in your series. So
Well,
it's really
yeah,
great.
I thank you guys for being able to participate. I mean, because if I don't have partners, then I won't be able to do this. So I really thank you for the time and, and just really offering them to actually host and to help present as well too. So yeah, I mean, this is really turned out better than we anticipated. We started this out in of course during COVID, and
Yeah.
it just kind of morphed into this, you know, big thing. And I think mainly because we do a lot of the PDH credit. So, but whatever the case is, I'm just glad that people actually take out the time to listen to what we have to say. So,
No, it's
that's
great.
great.
It's great.
Yeah.
It's a great resource.
Yeah. Yeah. And so a lot of the topics are very interesting. So, but I'll go ahead and shoot that to you now. And just let me know if you need anything else. I'll be happy to assist.
Thank you so much.
You're
So,
welcome. Have a good one.
you too. Bye.
Bye bye.
Hey, this is Carrie. Michelle, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Very good. So I'm just flopping around here trying to figure out where I can get more information about the sort of how the NCDEQ's perspective on different applications of this living shoreline and I guess they're calling them NNPR, whatever. This whole idea, how that may be changing over time, and where can we find the most current preferences for what DEQ prefers in terms of shoreline design? Is there some, please?
I'm going to shoot you my email. And if you can
Okay.
put that, I'm putting shoot you my email. If you could shoot me an email and basically let me know what all you're looking for, because it may be two different people that I may need to send you to, and
Okay.
and that way we can make sure you get your questions answered. So
Okay, great. Yeah,
okay,
very good. Thank you.
no problem. Have a good one.
You too.